I see it's 9 a.m. I'm not sure if everyone in the boardroom is ready or not.
Recording in progress.
Morning, we'll get started in just a minute. Is everyone in the boardroom ready to get going?
Yes.
Yes.
Not, well, let's see. Can someone try saying something?
Something.
Perfect. Okay, well, it is 9:01 a.m. and I will call the meeting to order. First up, let's do a round of introductions. I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Chair. We will do introductions in the room first and then move to introductions online.
Pat Malone, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Zano, Rural Commissioner.
Rick Krager, Chief Financial Officer, filling in for Joe Kirby. Vance Cronin, County Council. Eric Milo, Board Recorder. Patricia Denner, Citizen.
Tony Howell, citizen.
Justin Lewis, citizen man for them.
Toby Lewis, Monthly Administrator.
Darren Nichols, Community Development Director.
Greg Barat, Deputy Director, Community Development.
Amanda Makepeace, Administrative Assistant. Julie Jackson, Municipal Manager of the Public Services.
Rick Rogan, Public Information Officer, and County.
That's everyone, Nancy.
Thank you. And then I'll have those online introduce themselves.
Jeff Van Arsdal, Benton County Sheriff.
Samian Parati, facilitator.
Richardson, Senior Manager for Public Affairs at Republic Services.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department Director.
Hi, April Holland, Public Health Administrator.
John Pegg, Benton County Public Health.
Brandon Persinger, Association of Oregon Counties Natural Resource Legislative Affairs Manager.
All right, anyone else online who would like to introduce themselves?
I'm Lynn Schmidt. I'm the Vice Chair with the Northwest Regional Floodplain Management Association.
Peggy Lynch, Benton County Citizen.
All right, very good. Are there any announcements? Hearing none, we will review and approve the agenda. Oh, excuse me, we have comments from the public first. We will go to comments from the room first and then comments online. And I see that Patricia Benner has signed up. And Patricia, you have up to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Patricia Benner. I became very involved in learning details of the Van Buren Bridge project a number of years ago, including recently as one of the consulting party members by ODOT or for ODOT to be part of the Section 106 bridge process that includes the development of a mitigation plan and products for the bridge. I speak as a citizen for myself today. I'm here today to share information so that I can be more confident that the key reasons for a bicycle and pedestrian-only river crossing is apparent to everyone. This is because these reasons are still, these reasons motivated me at least, but they're still very alive and apply to our community, even though the old bridge will be discarded. It's worth discussing that a river crossing solely for pedestrians and bicyclists would be valuable here at Corvallis. It's especially true because of the design of the new bridge. I'm not sure how universally some of these points are understood by the community. I want to make it clear that for most people who are, and I'm sorry, it's hard for me to look up because of my neck, which doesn't bend. So I still would like to connect with you. I want to make it clear that for most people who were involved in the support of the repurposing of the bridge, that saving the bridge as an historic structure was important, but safe river crossing was an equal or more important objective for these folks. Now, something that's historic also still needs to be functional, if at all possible. So for many people, the two came all together. What did that mean? That's not okay. I heard a noise. Anyway, but while saying that, I do not wish to overlook that a clear expectation, according to NEPA federal law, is to protect historic structures. And this is my one personal comment, which is I found it interesting. ODOT had to work very hard to find a way around this expectation of protecting something if it's at all prudent and feasible to do so, an alternative to do so. And there was always the option of paying to move the bridge. But that's history at this point. I'd like to focus on the main aspects of it. First of all, and this applies mainly to the old bridge, but the current Van Buren Bridge, if we're using new location, whatever, is safe and functional. The purpose of moving the bridge was to create a safe and functional pedestrians and bicycle crossing over the Willamette River. These points are still relevant for the community. Safer because a second bridge would separate bicycles and pedestrians from semi-trucks and other traffic. Now, the data, as we've gone and looked at the current Van Buren Bridge, data shows that vehicles regularly cross the current bridge, even though it's enclosed single lane. They cross the bridge at speeds regularly at 40 to 45 miles an hour.
Patricia, if you could go ahead and wrap up.
Oh, okay. Darn. Can I have a little bit more time because I got
you can have a closing statement.
Worried about. So the other the second is for safety, is that the new bridge, not everybody is aware that the semi-trucks will be going over that bridge, and there's sort of the going out of town mentality, where on the downhill side of the bridge the speeds could easily be 45 miles an hour. So in summary, I just like to say, I wrote in summary, is that for the reasons that I've described and others I haven't gotten to, there's still a need for a bridge across the Willamette River that gives pedestrians and bicyclists the option to be separate from large motorized vehicles as they cross the Willamette, and that the bridge be accommodating to all citizens, including disabled users. So I'd like to come today and say that this is still a live discussion. We need to still find a way of creating a crossing across the Willamette. Let's actively pursue an alternate crossing on the river. Although the Van Buren Bridge would have provided more functional options, an alternative new bicycle ped bridge will provide many of these crossing services and could be preferable in its own way.
Thank you, Patricia. And feel free to submit that testimony or anything in writing that you would like to submit to us and have part of the record today.
I need to get that to you via email probably. Would that be okay? Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to comment today? I don't think I'm seeing any. Is there anyone online that would like to comment today? Hearing none, we can move along. We will review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I will consider that approved. We will move into the work session. First up, we have something very special today that we are all excited about. The recognition of Toby Lewis as the Northwest Floodplain Management Association's Outstanding Individual of the Year. And she is with us along with Darren Nichols, our Community Development Director. Welcome. I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but we're still going to make this work.
That sounds good. Commissioners, Madam Chair, commissioners, guests, and Toby, this is a rare moment in public service, and we have an opportunity to thank and really formally recognize one of our colleagues for their outstanding work. I think we recognize and appreciate each other every day, but this is one of those moments in a career when we have a chance to say thank you and appreciate Toby's work over the last 21 years with Benton County. And it's not just us that are sharing that recognition, but it's the Northwest Floodplain Management Association and Toby's colleagues from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, British Columbia, and Alaska, who have selected Toby Lewis as the 2022 Outstanding Individual of the Year in floodplain management. And I think that really speaks for itself. We have on the line a representative from Northma, who I'd like to invite to just share a couple of brief comments about what led to the selection. Chair-wise, I think it'd be appropriate to hear from Toby for a moment, if that's okay. Lynn, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you everyone for inviting me, and congratulations, Toby. Certainly sounds like a well-deserved nomination. So Toby was nominated by her peers for her outstanding leadership in floodplain management, her community service, and working with the county citizens on mitigating their flood risk and understanding what the risk is and what they can do to mitigate that risk on their properties. So Northma is an organization, as you mentioned, it's 4 states, Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And each year we have a conference where we recognize our peers, and one person is nominated each year for their outstanding work in floodplain management. And so Toby was that person this year. So we are very happy to present the award, and thank you very much for your great work.
Speech.
Toby, would you like to share your words?
So I don't know what to say. It's been a lot of fun. And it was certainly not what I expected when I graduated, when I got the internship here. I got to pick a project that just sounded like it was interesting. But I'm very grateful that Peter took a chance on an intern, and then I was able to get a job because it's been very enjoyable. And building the program from not having a program to having an entire floodplain program that really aims to protect floodplains and protect people and structures from flooding, and help ensure that when we do have floods, that people are better able to more quickly get back to their daily lives because their structures are already elevated and aren't going to get flooded as much, is a good thing. And we've got a couple new projects coming that are pretty exciting for getting our floodplain maps redone. And yeah, it was just really nice to to be nominated. So.
Commissioner, thank you, Toby. Commissioners, you have in front of you an article from the Gazette Times from November 21st, 2002. And I'll just read one short paragraph. It reads like this. Under the heading, locals flood insurance rates drop. There's a statement in the article that says, during the summer of 2001, a student intern from Oregon State University, Toby Lewis, conducted the research and completed the application for inclusion in the National Flood Insurance Program. She did such a great job, Benton County hired her as an associate planner, Peter Idema said. And I just wanted to underscore that Toby has done that great job since she came as an intern 21 years ago and continues to do an even better job for us. She's now no longer an intern. Toby's one of our senior planners who really leads the planning program here and is teaching and training the next generation of planners the importance of protecting lives and property through the floodplain program and other land use protections. And yeah, I include myself in that. Toby teaches me every day, and we're just very, very grateful to have Toby Lewis on our staff. So.
Yes.
With that, we're going to take a photo opportunity.
Okay.
Line up right to the side of the screen so we can get Commissioner Weiss and virtually we'll kind of horseshoe it out a little bit.
Okay. Grab your plaque.
Am I getting bunny ears on Pat?
Yeah, that's
And no laughing. Okay, no laughing. Will I get shocked?
1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Toby. We very much appreciate you. We're super glad that you are with us here at Benton County. Don't ever leave us. All right, and with that, we can move on to our COVID update with Suzanne Hoffman and April Holland. Welcome.
Good morning, commissioners. Boy, that's a hard topic to follow. Congratulations, Toby, and thank you for all the wonderful work for Benton County and our community. And I will turn it over to April for your regular update this morning.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good morning, everyone. And congratulations, Toby. That was incredible. So your COVID update. Since for the last 2 weeks, after increasing slightly at the beginning of September, both statewide and Benton County reported cases have declined a little bit. As we move in earnest into fall and winter, we still expect increases in both COVID-19 and other respiratory infections. And while a mix of new Omicron subvariants and standard waning of immunity are expected to generate this increase in infections, the hope is the effect that may be mitigated by the new bivalent vaccine boosters. And when the details of the vaccine effectiveness become more clear, modeling by OHSU and others will be adjusted. So we'll keep you updated as we understand exactly or with more clarity what we are expecting. The CDC reported case rate is 112 per 100,000 residents, which is down from 117 per 100,000 when we met 2 weeks ago. Hospitalizations have been mostly steady, but have decreased some in recent weeks. Total hospitalized patients in Oregon as of October 12th was 248, decreased from the 268 reported on October 4th. Hospitalizations obviously remain much lower than our last peak, which was over 460 in July. Here in Region 2, 23 people were hospitalized as of October 12th. And in this month so far, the regional hospitalizations have ranged from 23 to 38 daily. There's a lot of fluctuation there, with an average of about 31 people hospitalized each day. The latest CDC data reflect 2.2 COVID admissions per 100,000 population in our area. This is down from 5.4 just 2 weeks ago. So it's very encouraging to know that at this time, COVID hospitalizations are low. Again, as we gather more indoors and move into that respiratory virus season, move more squarely into it, we are expecting more cases. Here in the US, hospitalizations have remained relatively flat, with the exception of some increases up in the Northeast. However, we always like to look far afield. Nearly all European countries are experiencing increases in hospitalizations related to COVID-19. Across most of Europe, hospitalizations have reached the levels experienced with the BA4, BA5 wave, that 460 that I mentioned here. And we know that trends in Europe have made their way to the US several times previously in the pandemic. So we should remain vigilant and prepared to increase mitigation efforts as we learn more. The current OHSU modeling forecast shows increased levels of COVID transmission over the next 2 months. OHSU predicts that the maximum of the expected upcoming wave is expected to be 630 hospitalizations on December 13th. And this figure may be adjusted as more data comes in on the performance of the new bivalent vaccine. In terms of wastewater surveillance, Oregon wastewater surveillance data is mostly unchanged. So no meaningful fluctuations up or down at this point. There was a decline in the average wastewater levels that began in July. It was a pretty steep decline, and that seems to have leveled off. So now it's flat rather than continuing in decline. Last week, bivalent vaccine boosters were expanded into younger age groups. So now kiddos aged 5 to 11 for Pfizer vaccine and 6 to 17 for Moderna are eligible if it's been at least 2 months since their last booster or vaccine series, the initial vaccine series. The more uptake we have in our community, obviously, the better prepared we're going to be for these increases in the winter. I do want to share that Benton County has the highest bivalent booster uptake for Oregon for people ages 65 and older. As of the most recent data, 37.3% of residents in that age group had received a bivalent booster. The state rate is 15.6%. We also currently have the highest rate for 50 to 64-year-olds. There's a lot of really great work going out there, and we hope that many more people go and seek the bivalent booster, which is readily available at providers' offices, pharmacies, and at many vaccine clinics throughout the community. Those can be found on our website. And then I'm going to pitch flu again. It's not Halloween yet, so if you haven't gotten your flu shot this year, please go ahead and do that. Flu activity is increasing in the United States, and our healthcare system remains strained, from hospitals to long-term care facilities for getting appointments when you're feeling unwell. So we encourage all to avoid that further strain and protect yourselves from flu. That's all I have for you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Comments or questions for April?
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned data from Europe, and I've asked about that in the past, just kind of a preview, a potential preview of what's coming. Do we get fairly quick turnaround on that data? I know we have just in the States sometimes, well, it was the weekend or it was a holiday, and so data is delayed this week. I was just curious how close to real-time overseas data is.
That's a good question, Commissioner Malone. The hospitalization and reported case data is fairly up to date. Different countries have different reporting mechanisms and timelines. So we absolutely keep an eye on what the methods are and use updated information to the best of our abilities. But these increased hospitalization figures were reported by OHSU in their last forecast, which was conducted just a few days ago.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was about our vaccination booster rate, and you answered that with good news. I see I guess last week out at the fairgrounds, and it looked busy. So congratulations on having Benton County be at in the lead on getting people ready for the winter. So I think that's what I had, but definitely pass the word around. Thank you for getting the clinics and at various locations and having good community response. I think that's to be congratulated. You don't get a plaque like Toby, but I think
it's a great village. We have so many partners involved at every turn, and I thank you, and I will pass those thanks on. I think focusing on people ages 65 and older is really important. I urge everyone to go out and get that bivalent booster when they can. Obviously, honing in on people who are impacted more, and those who are underserved are really at the center of our efforts. So our relationships with all of those long-term care facilities, ensuring that they have a connection to have several opportunities for getting those boosters and removing barriers where we can is something that's really important to us. Thank you.
And thank you for continuing to mention the flu. I mean, it's taken a back seat in the last couple of years, and we can't forget about it. So continue to emphasize that, because it really doesn't matter which infection you get. It's they're both bad. So
both are very impactful.
Hopefully we're doing well on flu shots around the region.
All right. Other comments or questions?
Nope.
All right. Thank you so much, April. And thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Right. That brings us to our discussion of the private forest accord legislation and Oregon Department of Forestry rulemaking. We have Brandon Persinger joining us today, the Legislative Affairs Manager from Association of Oregon Counties. We have up to 20 minutes today. Welcome, Brandon, and thank you for coming.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Brandon Persinger, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Manager for Natural Resources at the Association of Oregon Counties. I am here today to inform Benton County's Board of Commissioners about an issue facing your county that is due to the Department of Forestry's implementation of Senate Bill 1501, which is the Private Forest Accord. So in 2021, the legislature passed what is being referred to as the Private Forest Accord, and to achieve the regulatory certainty that the industry wanted, while also adding protections for animal habitat and species that the environmental and conservation groups were requesting, Senate Bill 1501 started to make changes to how forest land is managed in the state. So these changes have caused the department to open up for revisions the Oregon Forest Practices Act. The Oregon Forest Practices Act is the statutory regulations that set the standards for activities involving the establishment, management, or harvesting of trees in Oregon's forest land. Some of the changes called for in the Private Forest Accord include increase and added protections to stream buffers, new requirements to inventory, maintenance, and management of forest roads, increased tree retention on steep slopes, increased protections for fish in amphibian habitat, and the creation of a habitat conservation plan. It is very important to note that this habitat conservation plan, which I'll go into in just a minute, is separate and distinct from the habitat conservation plan that the department is currently developing for state forests. So two separate HCPs. The Board of Forestry met on August 24th and gave the department the permission and the direction to open the public comment period for these proposed changes to the Forest Practices Act. The board will then meet for a special meeting on October 26th to formally adopt the changes to the Forest Practices Act. As I mentioned earlier, one of the pieces of Senate Bill 1501 is the establishment of a habitat conservation plan. So a habitat conservation plan, also known as an HCP, is a planning document designed to accommodate economic development to the extent possible by authorizing the limited and unintentional take of a listed species when it occurs incidental to otherwise lawful activities. The plan is designed not only to help the landowners, but also provide long-term benefits to the species and habitats that it has been put in place to protect. So why is this of interest to the county since it was the Private Forest Accord? Well, there are currently 7 counties that I can find a record of that own or manage their own forest land: Clackamas, Coos, Curry, Douglas, Hood River, Josephine, and then Benton County's Memorial Forest. The Department of Forestry and I have been in conversations over the past month to discuss the changes to the Forest Practices Act and how they will impact public forest land or county managed forest. They have indicated that even though the changes put in place by Senate Bill 1501 were from the Private Forest Accord, the Forest Practices Act will be amended and these changes will be placed on all forest land, regardless of whether they are public or private. The issue facing county forest land is that the counties will be subjected to the new rules under the Forest Practices Act, but currently, because they are public forests and not private forests, they are not eligible for the Habitat Conservation Plan's incidental take permit. Essentially, you will be subjected to the new rules without the legal protections in case something happens. So if a county chooses to harvest some of their forest land, they will be subjected to the new rules and not have those legal protections. Last week, I asked the chairs of the 7 counties that own or manage forest land to join myself and one of the authors of the Private Forest Accord for a discussion about this issue. And the question that was asked of the commissioners during that meeting was, how would you like me to proceed? Essentially, there are 2 options. Option A, work with the department and the Private Forest Accord signatories to extend the incidental take permit ability to the county public land. If we're subjected to these rules, legal protections, if something were to happen, should be extended as well. Or option B, work to amend county forest land out of the changes being made to the Forest Practices Act. The counties were not at the table for the discussion of the PFA, and as such, they shouldn't be regulated under those changes. I've asked the department if they would consider offering the counties an opt-in option. Essentially, if the county wants to harvest some of their land, whether they would be able to acquire an incidental take permit. And the department indicated that that would not be an option. Counties would either need to be all in or all out. So during that discussion, the chair stated that she would like to have a conversation with the rest of the board as to the direction that AOC should proceed. I am not here to make a recommendation one way or the other. If the board would like to consult with their county council or their forester or any other appropriate staff, I would highly encourage and recommend that. I simply wanted to ensure that Benton County knew about the issue that they were facing on their memorial forest and what is happening regarding the Forest Practices Act. So thank you for your time, commissioners, this morning. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to present on this issue, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate that. You explained it much better than I could have. So my fellow commissioners, thoughts, comments, Commissioner Ojero?
Unfortunately, our lead staff person on our forest management plan for Benton County is out on leave, but want to make sure that he is aware of the issue. Personally, I would prefer the option of extending the habitat conservation plan with its incidental take protection to the counties rather than just opting out of the private forest accord altogether.
Commissioner Malone, thoughts or questions?
Yeah, Brandon, when you say Benton County's Memorial Forest, is that Bazell?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so that's the limit of our exposure to this question. Is
Fort
that?
Hoskins too. We had our county forest plan and covers primarily Bazell Memorial Forest, but there's some woodlands on Fort Hoskins that, as I recall from the forest plan, are also would probably be subject to any kind of forest, state forest.
And maybe fit and green.
And fit and green.
Okay, so those three.
So
okay.
It does go beyond Bazell.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would go along with Commissioner Ojero and try to have the same protections that the private forests currently have in this arrangement. But other than that, I don't have the information. Brandon, would you go over, sound like the turnaround time is fairly quick here. Is that October 26th for
yes, Commissioner. So the Board of Forestry is meeting on October 26th to adopt the changes to the Forest Practices Act that Senate Bill 1501 and the Private Forest Accord is putting in place. The department will then have on their November 16th agenda an agenda item calling for the official start to the habitat conservation plan, working with the federal government and the services. So there is a quick turnaround time in who is being subjected to the changes of the Forest Practices Act, and then on November 16th, who is eligible to potentially receive those incidental take permits.
And do you have a sense what the other 6 counties that manage their own forest land are doing at this point?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. I do. During that meeting, Josephine County and Clackamas County were not available to participate. Douglas, Hood River, Curry, and Coos have all indicated that if they are being subjected to the new rules of the Forest Practices Act, then they would like to receive the protections that others being subjected to those rules would also be given. So I still have to follow up with Clackamas and Josephine County at this point.
So others are basically saying the same thing, that they want to be covered by the incidental take permit under the Habitat Conservation Plan. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, other comments or questions? I'll just put it out there that I concur with what my fellow commissioners are saying. Pat, were you going to say something else?
Well, just do we need to get on record this morning, or do we have more time to get more information?
I don't necessarily feel like we need more information. I think that it sounds like the consensus of our board is that we would like to be included in under the HCP provisions.
Which you described as option A, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I will, as I continue to have conversations with the department, I will be sure to keep the board here apprised of what's going on. Whether the department will officially extend those incidental take permits, or if not, what potential plan B or C might entail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon, do you have enough from us to proceed, or would you like something more formal?
No, this was perfect, Commissioner. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Okay.
All right, very good. Well, thank you very much, Brandon. We really appreciate you coming here today. We know we're just one county. I really appreciate your accessibility. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Have a great day. Okay. Next up on the agenda is update from Benton County Talks Trash Solid Waste Process Work Group with our Community Development Director, Darren Nichols.
Good morning again. Thank you for having us. This is our twice monthly update, and I have with me our facilitator, Sam Parati, who would like to present a proposal this morning. So I think rather than bore you with anything more from me at the moment, I'll just turn to Sam and ask Sam to present a proposal for the work of the work group. It's a change from the schedule that we put forward earlier, involving some additional subcommittee work. It would also involve an extension of time. So Sam, would you like to take it from here and present the proposal?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Sam Parati, Benton County Talks Trash Facilitator. Hopefully visible on the screen is a several page document. The first page provides an overview of the subcommittee meetings and potential work group meetings between now and completion of the project. I'll circle back and get that to you. The highlight of this particular document was the status quo is having the work group deliver its final report to you on December 15th, 2022. This proposal shifts everything out so that either A, the final report is delivered on March 3rd, 23, or depending on your direction surrounding high-level benefit cost work and getting CUP conditions from other jurisdictions that have landfills, that would move that final report date out to March 24th because it would require another meeting. I'll circle back and walk you through that, but that's the high level overview. A lot of the work needs to happen in subcommittees. We've all heard the expression forming, storming, norming, and performing. We spent a lot of time, frankly, storming, and as a result, this was a very aggressive schedule to begin with, but the storming became much more difficult to keep on task for December 15th date. Below all of this work are the various subcommittees. So what staff and I have put together is a series of subcommittees. For instance, A1, landfill size, capacity, longevity. That subcommittee will deal with charge A, as in A, charge 1. And the subcommittee members are listed there along with their email addresses and the various links to the website with all of the documents that have been accumulated to date. The other subcommittees that will be meeting were the past CUP conditions subcommittee. And there we have the various members and in several cases, members of the public joining us for that particular subcommittee. Then we have a combination subcommittee that involves, is very law focused. That's A3, which is the legal issues that are part of the common understandings, and then B1, which is the land use review process. Staff has done a lot of work on all of these subcommittees, which also includes a subcommittee on the scoping the sustainable materials management plan. All that work appears in the right-hand column. Staff will be merging it together into the fewest number of summary documents. They will be vetted by the subcommittee in a series of meetings in between work group meetings. And then their work product will be presented to the work group at large for formal polling, ultimately, regardless of the result being turned into the final report. So going back to the top here, what seems like not much activity here during these subcommittee meetings really could involve one or two meetings per subcommittee opportunity, because there is a lot of work that staff has prepared, as well as members of the work group have prepared and submitted, and in some cases, members of the public have moved forward. So I'll pause there and ask for any questions for clarification on the overview, or any questions whatsoever to put this in perspective for you.
Clarifying questions, commissioners?
I would just state that I really appreciate this plan. It looks like a thoughtful and thorough plan that's responsive to the working group's needs and our needs as well.
Yeah, my thoughts, I think this makes sense, but to give more time, because the original timetable was aggressive, and I think from the start it showed that there might not be enough time to come out with a final report with the original timetable. But I hope the message has gotten to the work group that it's time to focus attention and get some of these questions answered, and make sure that everybody is on task, and so that with the revised timetable of March, that we end up with a useful final report to give to the board.
Just to clarify, Sam, are you looking for approval at this point, or do you have more to go over?
Well, I think 2 points and for transparency and process fairness purposes. Republic strongly prefers the existing schedule, which ends on December 15th versus this March 3rd and March 24th. I've had a few conversations, but they only started yesterday, either late morning or early afternoon, with Republic Services. They have a representative. Republic has a representative on the call. I don't know what your protocol is for asking questions or taking comments at this point versus the public comment period. But I do, in fairness, want to note that they have stated quite assertively that this is a problematic schedule for them. As to the details, I don't feel competent or it's appropriate for me to argue or state the case, because I'm just the process facilitator, not the substantive expert on the landfill.
Let me ask my fellow commissioners, would you like to ask representative from Republic Services to weigh in, or are we good just continuing?
I don't have strong feelings either way. I really prefer this timeline. I think it's far more, will allow for a far more meaningful level of work and community building around the solid waste management issues to proceed.
Commissioner Wise, this period of time is really just build for an update from your staff to the board. And I feel like if we were to open the door to conversation with one of the participants in the work group, it would undermine the spirit in which we've approached the work. So you certainly can do what you feel is appropriate this morning, but I would recommend that we not try to open a conversation with the board on an ad hoc basis at this point.
Very good.
May I just quickly add that there is also 2 decisions here that are probably beyond the scope of our brief check-in today. And one is this distinction between the 3/3 end date and the 3/24 end date that deals with benefit cost work and CUP conditions. Those were in the initial charge, but in order to keep this as tight as possible, I gave you the option there. And then also there are budget ramifications that we're not prepared to present to you so that you would have a complete package to look at.
Yeah, I would be interested in what this does to the overall cost, and go back to my comment of the group focusing on the issues that they're supposed to be talking about, and getting, so we can get a final report that's useful for the board to make a decision.
Personally, this is not a budget contingent decision for me. I don't think it's going to be a number that's going to break the bank. I'd rather do this right and have the report be substantive and meaningful. So that's where I stand at this point.
My point was to get the information out that this new proposed timetable is not free, and that staff time and Sam's time is the group needs to know what the ramifications of extending the timetable is.
Yeah, and
And I would like that information.
so I think what we can do is schedule another conversation about this at an upcoming board meeting. Sam, what date do you need to know by?
Well, in a perfect world, which I recognize we are not in, the next work group meeting is on October 27th. So it's really in short order that is coming up. That would be ideal. I would propose that I will just proceed full speed ahead with what you see on the screen for the subcommittee meetings between October 19th and 25th and the 27th meeting. And so, you have your other priorities, obviously, but I think the drop dead date would be, oh boy, I mean, it really is as soon as possible. I'm sorry to continue on.
Okay. Well, we will work on that and we'll keep in touch. I'll just share that I too, want to make sure that this is done right. And when we saw the original schedule, I thought, man, that is tight. And so I'm not surprised that we maybe need to slow down a little bit and tweak the timeline a little bit. I agree with Commissioner Ojro, the money probably isn't going to be an issue, but obviously we do want to see that before we make any decisions. And also I want to make sure that the county administrator has a chance to look at this and put his thoughts in it. So sounds like we will schedule this for TBD.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sam, before we leave the topic, can we bring a more detailed kind of work plan with a budget back for the commissioner's consideration, perhaps as early as next Tuesday? And I think we would welcome kind of your general approval to move forward based on what we see here, but with an understanding that we'll bring back to you a more detailed work plan and budget so that you can see that, provide additional direction, and also so that we can present that to the work group. As Commissioner Malone suggested a minute ago, they really should understand the implications of time and cost on this. The other thing I feel like we just need to say out loud is that this is the beginning of a much bigger project to address the future of solid waste. And I think we always knew that there was going to be somewhat of an arbitrary kind of stopping point for the work of the work group so that we can then get into the bigger long range planning. It feels to me like at this point, the work group is tipping a little bit into that more detailed work, which is fine. But the work group is not going to be, even on this schedule, they're not going to be able to create a sustainable materials management plan or the really detailed work. And I just want to say that for the benefit of the public, that giving ourselves this extra time will present a better work product from the work group. But the big work is still ahead. And so I just feel like we need to say that out loud and probably need to repeat that a few times. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. And that was a very good summation. Thank you. Anything else on this topic?
So this will be on the agenda for Tuesday, the 25th, a week from today.
Possibly. We will have to double check that because that is a very busy meeting already, but possibly. Other comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Let's see. Next, that brings us to, let's take a 5-minute break. Let's come back at 10:03. All right, are we ready to come back yet? Is everyone in the boardroom ready? Or do we need a couple more minutes? All right, I think we are ready to get going again. Next item on the agenda, the update from the Justice System Improvement Program with Nick Kurth, our Justice System Improvement Program Manager. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chair, County Council, Acting County Commissioner. Always good to be here. Also, our twice monthly JSIP update. This will be brief. The real meat of today's JSIP item comes later when we review the community survey results sometime after 11. But I did wanted to touch on a couple of highlights since we last met. And as well, I've invited Lindsay Goodman here to provide an update on our small stakeholder sessions. Brenda Downham was actually ill today, or she might be sitting here, but I'm thankful to have Lindsay, who's really doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. So I'll give my updates real quickly and then turn it over to Lindsay. Yesterday I shared this matrix with you, which you've seen in the past. I've cut it down and updated it, so it's current as of October. Since we last met, we did share a qualitative survey very broadly with the community. We're still compiling results from that, but we've had a tremendous response, so that'll be interesting to review here. I think that's going to stay open until the end of October or roughly, so that'll be forthcoming. We do have our community safety forum tomorrow evening, which we're gearing up for. And also I wanted to share that I met with DLR Group a little over a week ago, and we are moving up our final costing exercise. And so I'm expecting final costing figures for the community safety and justice campus facilities around the end of the month, end of this month. That's kind of a strategic move, and kind of in feeling the winds as we approach deliberating around a final bond measure. Felt that it was important that we have final costing numbers sooner than later to start discussing with staff, looking at options. Rick's shaking his head. I have also asked of Gary Stockoff and Ricky Garcia similar numbers on the crisis center to the extent that they can provide them, Girding can provide them, and acknowledging that they are still in conceptual design, but we will need as solid a numbers as we can get, probably no later than the middle of November. And sooner with some of the other facilities. So more to come on that, but that was the big item that changed on this matrix from a couple of weeks ago till now. And then with that, let me pause. I'll ask for any questions.
No, just a comment. I appreciate hearing something moved up. We have a lot of moving back deadlines, and I think as long as we can have the best information available, I think that's a smart move on our part, so that we have a good idea what we're looking at, and then do our prioritizing and figuring out how things fit together. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, as you're all familiar with, JSIP always has a lot of moving parts. So trying to minimize variables and maximize options as much as possible. Chair-wise, if I might, no question, but just a comment. I want to wholeheartedly support Nick's efforts on this as we fine tune these numbers. This is going to be extraordinarily important as we get closer and closer to considerations around financing. We need to have those kind of, again, I know numbers change, I get it, but we need to make sure that we are as close as possible so that we can hone in kind of financing in the time, because we're getting down to that place. Yeah.
And more time to figure out funding options.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. All right, thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay. And again, I just want to say how thankful I am to have Lindsay's assistance. Honestly, in 2.5 years, this is probably the first time I've gotten to sit back and just watch it happen, as she and Brenda have really put together all of these small group sessions. So I sprung this on her at 9 o'clock this morning, said, hey, come on, you present, you guys have done the work. So Lindsay, take it away.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you all for having me here this morning. So just a quick update on our stakeholders and where we're at with our small groups. As of this morning, we've officially reached out to 32 different organizations. We've moved into a priority 2 category. And so yesterday I conducted outreach with 8 new organizations, bringing us up to that 32 number. At this point, we've completed 3. We've got 9 scheduled and another 5 in process. And 4. Yes, thank you, of course. And so with that, as we move forward, we're hoping to finish these stakeholder groups by December 5th, and then go into a quiet period for December and January, which at that point, we hope to pick up any remaining stakeholders. Any questions?
I can talk a little bit about quiet period if that's on your mind.
No, I was just thinking about the schedule, the fact that there are a couple of presentations already scheduled in that January period when we start up again.
Yeah, at the end of January. And for context, what I mean, or what Lindsay means by a quiet period, is once we start deliberating on the bond package, it gets to be kind of awkward to be giving presentations on, well, we think it's this, it might be this. We also know that there's going to be just a tremendous amount of work leading up to that, and it's the holidays. Then in January, at that point, we are really working with Secretary of State on final bond language as well as safe harbor language. So it really makes sense strategically and in terms of workload to kind of pause through the holidays, get into January, know what we have a final bond measure decision, and then we go back out with that message. It's not, it might be this anymore. This is what the bond package is. So that's the reason for that more of a pause in December, January.
I appreciate the update on the number of work groups and contacting the community. I was at a candidate forum recently, and the candidate talked about, well, yeah, I kind of support the concept, but you should do it. You should keep it simpler and cheaper. And I think it's important to point out not just the recent history, but this process started in 2018, Ari Basil Wagner, community forums, so that kind of head off that, oh, I got an idea, why don't we do it? Well, it's too late. That a lot of work has gone in, time and money has gone into getting us to where we are now. And I think we need to make sure the community knows that this isn't a piece of paper with some blocks that you can move around, and that we're not finalized yet, but we're 90% there, or whatever percentage you're comfortable with. And so there's still some questions to be answered, but this isn't a blank slate that we can rearrange the big pieces. And I think it's important to show kind of the whole history of community engagement and listening, and this is how we got to where we are now.
Absolutely, and I think that's the third slide in our presentation. It is a timeline that goes all the way back to the assessment and then hits major milestones around engagement and pre-design work and site selection. And so Commissioner Rogereau has done a very good job of sharing all of that history and all of the investment that we have made along the way. We are still keeping open ears to, interesting ideas and concepts. But you're right. We are getting tighter and tighter in the funnel as we approach needing to align on a bond package.
Well, just like we started with 40 potential sites around the area and got down to 2 or 3, and now we're at 1. And it's not, oh, well, what about over here? In some respects, that ship has sailed, and the community needs to know where we are now and some of the background, how we got there.
Yep.
But are you getting all this, Corey? Okay. Because it is informing the larger community what's gone into this process. A modest number of people have been engaged for a while, but quite a bit of the community. This is kind of new.
We have other comments or questions? Nick, back to you.
No more comments from me. Thank you very much for the time, and we'll look forward to seeing you in an hour or so.
All right. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We recently took a break, so we will just move right into our business meeting. First up is the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve or make any changes to the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we have 2 public hearings that are scheduled for 11 a.m., so we will skip over those into new business. Item 7.1, discussion and decision regarding American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Memorandum of Agreement for Behavioral Health Workforce Incentives. And we have with us Tracy Martineau, Director of Human Resources. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioner Wise. I have some partners with me today. I see Ricky Garcia, and let's see, I'm looking for Debbie Sessions, others. Okay. Thanks for turning your camera on, Ricky, and joining me in this. So, commissioners, I have the memorandum of agreement in front of you today for approval. And this is the result of many conversations that we had with AFSCME related to the HB 4004 grant. And just as you recall, this grant was a grant that was awarded to our behavioral health team. And the intention behind the grant was to provide incentives for recruiting and retention. And so it took numerous conversations with AFSCME to negotiate what that was going to look like. And again, the results of that are contained in the MOA that you have in front of you. I thought you may have some other questions that I wouldn't be able to answer necessarily, but Ricky is our grant expert on this topic, and he's here today. And I'm sure between the two of us, we can answer any questions that you might have.
Perfect. Comments or questions?
I have none.
Nope.
Sorry, was that a no?
No.
No, okay. All right, any comments that you would like to make, Ricky?
No, I don't have any real comments other than it was a very collaborative experience working with AFSCME and getting feedback from employees throughout this whole process, and we're happy with where it landed.
All right, very good. If we are ready to entertain a motion, I will do so.
I'll move to approve the memorandum of agreement with AFSCME for the terms distributing the HB 4004 workforce incentives.
Second.
I believe I heard a second from Commissioner Ojero. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you
very much. Have a great day. All right. Next up on the agenda, 7.2, letter of intent, inclement weather shelter funding opportunity. And we have with us Suzanne Hoffman, Director of Health Services. Welcome.
Thank you. We should also have John Pegg with us this morning, who has really done all of the work to pull this together as to give a brief summary of what we've talked with you a bit about before, both separately and at our joint meetings with the city of Corvallis when we provided HOPE updates. One of our efforts related to both emergency management and public health, as well as one of the aspects of the overall sheltering initiative that is within the HOPE program work, is to ensure that we have inclement weather, but we've been focused mostly on winter time, so winter warming shelters, and ensuring that in particular that we're able to provide this for people who are unsheltered in our community or houseless. As I mentioned previously, our emergency manager for the county and the emergency manager for the city of Corvallis, as well as Benton County Public Health, have been collaborating on a multi-plan effort. As you know, normally the broadest plans are focused on the entire community as a whole. And it is often then public health's focus or the health department's focus to really zone in on some of our most vulnerable populations who may need additional levels of service or different kinds of surroundings and environments. So at my request, April Holland and John Pegg and members of our public health team began a planning effort around specifically that population of unsheltered individuals and warming centers in winter. So the crux of our request to you today is to have permission to submit a letter of intent to the city of Corvallis related to some funding that they recently advertised as being available. The deadline for a letter of intent is tomorrow, October 19th. We have, just to explain that this could be a bit of an iterative process, we have $50,000 set aside in the HOPE program budget that is part of the ARPA funds that you all granted the HOPE program, some of which was set aside specifically to cover 2 staffing positions that are limited duration, our project manager and our grant writer and researcher. As you know, Rebecca Taylor was selected as our project manager and is already off and running and doing a great job. And we were unable to hire an employee for the grant writer and researcher. We did not have a successful recruitment there. So we have a contract with Libby Lasecki Winters, who is a wonderful, respected and experienced in our local area grant writer, and who is already showing her value to the effort as well. We have some additional funds that could cover this winter warming as well. And of course, we will continue to seek other funds as we need to from other sources along the way, but at least to get us started, to know that we have a confidence level that we can do this winter, even if we don't locate any other funds, is we have that $50,000 set aside. And so to be able to open up winter warming shelters under certain circumstances, and just as a reminder how this is distinguished from the type of shelter that is open in our community on almost every day of the year, if not every day. This is specific for certain conditions in the weather, which has been outlined in our planning document. And it is and this is what most communities in Oregon do, is they set a threshold, temperature drops to a certain level, or certain other weather conditions exist as predicted by the National Weather Service. And that is the trigger that would open the warming shelter under those circumstances. That is a minimum level that we would like to have for our community, for our unsheltered individuals. And we plan to get an RFP out this month, and we hope we will get a service provider to submit a proposal for that work. And we can move forward with at least that basic level of life safety response when that kind of weather comes in winter. Because Corvallis has also put out $1 million and welcoming letters of intent to apply specifically for the purpose of increasing shelter, transitional housing, and or permanent supported housing. We've been in contact with City of Corvallis and asked them if our project around inclement weather protection would be applicable for that funding. And we have received confirmation that we are welcome to submit a letter of intent to apply for additional funding for that purpose. And so we have put together a letter that we're prepared to send if we have your approval to do so today, that would ask them for $250,000 of that money that we could then expand our plan. And we would expand that to be able to lease a space all year round that could open up when certain inclement weather comes, whether that is cold in the winter, whether that is a certain level of heat in the summer, or whether there are smoke conditions that would cause it to open. That is a more expanded level of protection for this population in our community that we would like to be able to put in place. And if we were successful in acquiring those funds from the City of Corvallis, we could then make the effort to move that direction and find that space. And just so you know, we are, and I think I've mentioned this before, very well aware that service providers, not only in our community, but around the state, are pretty much at capacity. So it is in fact a possibility that we won't get a proposal in response to our RFP, and we wouldn't necessarily have a contract in place for service provision, because as you know, it takes space to do this, but it also takes service providers. So we are working on Plan B to be able to say, okay, if we don't get a service provider bid on this RFP this time around, what will our community's plan be for being able to staff this ourselves, whether it is through some combination of staff and what we would hope would be a large number of volunteers. I mentioned in the past too that we've kind of modeled some of our plan off of the plan that Lane County uses with the Egan Warming Center. It's been helpful to be able to view the contract that they have in place. That's how we estimated our dollar figures for the $50,000 for that very limited ability to open in the winter, as we based that on the numbers with the Egan Warming Center in Lane County, understanding that they serve many more people than we would project we would in our community, and they're just a larger community. And so the dollar amount is significantly less in our proposal than what they're using there. But the model itself, in terms of how they operate with minimal staff, maximum trained volunteers, and a welcoming, low barrier environment with service provision for those who come in to hopefully be able to do more than just shelter them overnight, but be able to hopefully help them move into a better space in the future, is also part of our plan. So that's what we're asking for today is permission to be able to move forward with the letter of intent to the city of Corvallis to see if we could potentially get that additional funding to expand our plan for our community. And welcome your questions and have John Pegg here as our subject matter expert to be able to help me respond to some of those.
All right, comments or questions?
Well, just a comment, I think this is a great idea. To me, it seems like it helps the whole goal number 6 of getting people sheltered. And so I'm all in favor of going forward. I guess my only question, you mentioned the $50,000 that Benton County set aside. Is that, would that be folded into the, or help getting the $250,000 grant from the city?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. That would be in addition to the $250,000 that we would hope to be able to apply for and receive from the city of Corvallis. I believe it will serve to show that that we are serious about moving forward to the degree that we can with the funds we currently have. So I hope that it demonstrates a level of readiness and commitment. And since we already work so closely with our partners at City of Corvallis on this work, I'm confident that they know that already.
And do you have an idea of the timetable? We submit the grant and then what's the turnaround time?
I don't have a specific date. Our partners at the city have said that they consider this to be urgent and would like whoever receives the funding to be able to act on that funding as soon as reasonably possible. So I don't think they plan to sit on this for very long. I think they plan to make decisions as quickly as they can. We're going to move forward as soon as we hear, because we just need to know if we are issuing an RFP for a more limited engagement with a service provider or for something more expansive. So, and we have a target of getting our RFP out by the end of this month. So I hope we would hear and whether or not we have an invitation to apply based on our letter of intent within that time frame.
Great. I mean, that was my concern, is the urgency of getting up and running, and so that's encouraging.
Other comments or questions?
Yes, my question is about the future. I think this is a great plan. I'm really grateful to see it finally come together, and it looks like it's very well thought out in terms of how it's structured. My question is whether it is likely that the city will continue to partner this way with us in the future. That if we are successful with a proposal to the city of Corvallis for this $1 million that they got as kind of extra bonus money, will there be funds to continue to support this level of seasonal sheltering and smoke sheltering that's needed?
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe there would be, as long as funds are available. And the reason that I say that is because, and I believe that our partners at the city are following up with their own counsel as we speak, because one of the questions that's been posed is, if we believe that we could appropriately lease a space for this work, for $250,000, including some level of supportive services or operations that would go along with that. And if they have $1 million that they're seeking to grant, if there are not other folks requesting those funds, or if this purpose for use of these funds is deemed a higher priority, could we perhaps in this application, assuming we get an invitation to apply following our letter of intent, could we apply for 3 years worth of that, 250 times 3, and see if we can get an opportunity to potentially get a 3-year lease on a space, which would probably be easier to do in our community and would suggest a level of commitment for the next few years. So that is just one avenue. I think there may also be other funding sources beyond the city and related to some of these efforts, particularly the smoke sheltering. John, please chime in if you're aware of any other resources that are either arriving or potentially coming our way.
Yeah, I've been in conversations with Oregon Department of Human Services. They had some funding up through 2022, which was more wildfire recovery. In 2023 and beyond, they're saying it's going to be a lot more flexible to be able to help with inclement weather and clean air sheltering. So hopefully there will be some funds released over the next coming years that we can apply for that will help fund these and hopefully have a sustainable shelter option for emergency inclement weather conditions. So, but I think this is a good start. If we can show that we have a very successful model, then we can look at other funding options to be able to support this and for long-term sustainability.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question, and that is, most grants have a limited time frame, and if we don't expend the full amount of the money, what happens then? Because we can't predict the cold weather, the hot weather, and the smoke events with any assurance.
Yeah, that's actually one of my questions for the city. It's possible that they've published that information. I just could not find it as I was preparing to talk with you this morning. I saw the reference to wanting this to be expended as soon as possible. But I believe that they're also well aware that sometimes these things are difficult to get in place and take a little bit of time. So, but I was going to pose that question. This is just a letter of intent. It's not an actual application for the funds. And so I was going to be sure that we know what that reality is before we apply so that we know how realistic it is and all the funds in time.
Thank you. I have no further questions about this specific proposal.
I will entertain a motion.
Oh, but Rick,
Is it right, Chair-wise, if I?
Oh,
if I
sure,
might
yes,
just
of course.
add? So, Suzanne, I think I wanted just to confirm what you said. So this money is coming to the city of Courthouse through a Oregon legislative appropriation. So this is a general fund piece. And to Commissioner Ogero's point, if the way the legislature has operated with a lot of these special appropriations, one of the things that they have done is sort of put a time limit on it, probably more likely to June 30th of 2023. So again, I don't know if they did the same conditions that they have done with other appropriations to this point, but a lot of this is they're kind of doing these one-time infusions and then looking for the rollback of dollars to put into the next budget cycle. Again, hopefully you have some more flexibility, but Suzanne's absolutely right. I think it's important to understand, what kind of flexibilities do you have beyond if you don't use all the resources? It's because clearly you'd like to see it continue, and being that color of money is usually pretty flexible. So again, I just wanted to add that for clarification.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'll move to grant permission to submit the letter of intent to apply for shelter funding from the city of Corvallis.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I do have one follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
Given that we now have the grant writer working with our team and that there are other funding opportunities out there, I expect that we will be seeing more of these requests from your team to the Board of Commissioners for proposals. And I hope that you will get them to us fast and furious so that we can continue to build our capacity.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I predict that to be the case as well. And I'm going to be talking with Rick in the near future about the both the most expeditious, but the most responsible way to get those requests in front of you. This one and one that I'll bring to you next Tuesday are coming on very tight turnaround times, and I apologize for that. I'm hoping that I'm confident that actually working with Rick, we can come up with a good process for being able to give you plenty of time to consider and review and still meet deadlines as they come our way.
Thank you.
No need to apologize.
Yep, just thank you for all the good work that you're doing. All right. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, John. Okay, with that, we can move on to the next item, which is designating Damian Sands as Benton County's Community Mental Health Program Director. And right back again, Suzanne Hoffman.
Yes, and I think we have, yep, Damian signing on as well. There he is. Okay, let's go try to get through this before one of us has a technical difficulty, which always seems to happen. So as you may recall, back on May 3rd of this year, as Danielle Brown departed for another opportunity, you all designated Ashley Talamantes as our Community Mental Health Program, CMHP, Director for Benton County in accordance with Oregon administrative rules, as she met the requirements of those OARs in terms of what qualifications a CMHP Director must have in Oregon. And as you also know, Damian joined us in August of this year, and that there requires a bit of a paperwork process with the Oregon Health Authority. That's why it's all the way into October before I bring you this request. But that process has been completed and determined that Damian Sands also meets those Oregon administrative rule requirements for community mental health program directors. So, and also Ashley Talamantes is out on parental leave, having had a baby girl in just a few weeks ago. So is no longer performing the functions of the role at this time. And so my request is that you designate Damian Sands as Benton County's Community Mental Health Program Director, or also known as our Behavioral Health Director for Benton County.
Very good. Comments or questions?
I would move to appoint Damian Sands as Behavioral Health Director.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And
Motion
we're very
carries.
happy to have you.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
All right, thank you so much. Anything else on this agenda topic before we move on? Nope. All right, thank you so much. And that brings us to 7.4. In the matter of a resolution to delegate authority to the Chief Financial Officer and County Administrator on approving reimbursement declaration for tax exempt debt. And here we have, oh, did you move, Rick? We have Rick Krager, Director of Financial Services.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Wise. Commissioners, appreciate the time today. I'll switch roles here. I thought it'd be a little bit easier to talk to you directly rather than have to bend your head over. So I have two items here. I'll try to be as efficient as I can to keep you on pace for your public hearing 11. The first item is relatively technical. In your packet has been provided a draft resolution. Just real quickly, the Internal Revenue Code has little provisions that they put in place for organizations that wish to issue tax exempt bonds. One of those provisions is that we have to essentially put forward a declaration of our intent to use tax exempt proceeds for reimbursement. So this is an exercise anytime the government is looking to issue tax exempt debt, it gives us the ability to put this declaration in place. And then anytime 60 days prior to that, we can get reimbursed for those expenses once the bonds are actually issued. One thing I want to be very, very clear on, what we are asking for today is not the authority to issue bonds. That still clearly exists with the commissioners. This is nothing more than a provision that would enable myself or the county administrator, or I should say the chief financial officer or the county administrator, to be able to issue this intent for reimbursement so that we never lose the opportunity to get reimbursed when the time comes. As you all know, we are moving forward with a variety of different types of initiatives. We in no way have made a commitment on what we're going to use. It could be anything from short-term to long-term type debt, bank loans, but tax exempt bonds is typically the more efficient way in government to issue. Usually there's a lot of cost savings. So I'm trying to prepare to be in place so that we have that ability. Again, in the past, every time there's been a declaration, we've come before the board. My intent here is to make it more efficient for you, to empower me or the county administrator to do that when the time is right. This is similar to what other counties have done. Actually, I modeled this after Deschutes County. Again, just prevents you from having to pass this declaration every time that occurs. I will tell you my intent, if you approve this today, will be likely to put a declaration in place probably within the next week or so, because we are now starting to get expenses. We'll be having expenses that I want to make sure that we can get reimbursed for down the road. So that will be my intent for Joe and myself to approve that. I have run this by county council to take a look at. I've also run it by our bond counsel, who helps provide us legal recommendations as it relates to issuance of any bond, and both have said that it all looks kosher. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Comments or questions?
Would you give an example of a reimbursement scenario?
Yeah, so I can use currently where we stand right now as it relates to the courthouse. So one of the things that we have talked about is we have to provide a match to the Oregon Judicial Department. One of the things I've modeled is actually tax exempt debt as the use of that. So we are currently in the process of putting contracts together. As you all know, several different types of contract, permit, survey work, as well as obviously the construction is going to be going out to RFP recently, the architectural engineering contract. All of those are reimbursable with tax exempt debt. In fact, our budget anticipates us doing that. So all those contracts are in place. Not a lot of spending right now, but I anticipate spending will start to pick up. So even though I potentially issue the bonds, let's say hypothetically May, we can still go back because these intent are to reimburse ourselves. Does that help, Commissioner?
Yes, and I appreciate getting this solved for the future and not just doing a one-off every time.
Exactly.
I appreciate the efficiency in looking ahead.
Again, just want to be efficient of your time, but like I said, you still have you will be the one I have to come before we issue any debt. So that obviously is in the future.
I guess the only clarification I had is that you mentioned a 60-day period of reimbursement, but it sounds like this is longer if the expenses that we're contemplating now will be reimbursable with a May.
So
let
me clarify. So once you put a declaration in, it's 60 days prior to that declaration that we can go back. Good news is I mean, I'm not seeing any major expenses. There are some other provisions that are technical that allow you to even go back further, but I won't get into that boring detail.
Thank you. That help. That's helpful clarification.
Other comments, questions, or a motion?
I'll move to delegate authority to the CFO and county administrator to approve, when necessary, all declarations of intent to reimburse under section 150-2 of the federal income tax regulations on behalf of Benton County and without further action by the Board of Commissioners of the county.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you,
All right, very good. Are we good to move on to the next item?
Commissioner Wise, I will certainly try. It looks like there's about 11 minutes, so I'll do my best. If for some reason or another we have to pause and come back, I certainly guess we could, but I can get us started if you like.
Perfect. Then we will move into 7.5, discussion and
What?
decision to implement zero fee for Benton area transit program for those 65 and older.
On the previous issue, do we need to talk about the resolution that's included?
I think your motion approved the resolution. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, at least I hope I wrote it that way.
I mean, you can talk about it now.
No,
I think
What?
Commissioner Oshro has already moved on.
I'm ready to move on, although the Internal Revenue Code is fascinating, but
You say.
Commissioner, happy to have some more conversation about that. I'm sure it's fascinating for you.
maybe later.
Okay. So thank you, Commissioner Wise, Commissioner members. Wanted to bring before you today a proposal for our Benton area transit program. This is something we've had some recent conversations about. Just as a little bit of background, our Benton area transit program provides services throughout certain parts of Benton County for our disabled population that are eligible for rides. There are certain disabled populations that are allowed for paratransit rides that are within the Philomath and Corvallis areas, but it's limited to particular areas. So one of the things that the program has done over the years is enabled ridership for seniors 65 and older, as well as peoples with disabilities that are outside the paratransit area for a fee. So there has been a fee collection process that's been in place for some time. Dial-A-Bus, our current contractor, was administering that. As we started to look at more efficiencies around this and accountability, really those revenues paying for the program. So we made some changes back in March and are working with them to ensure that we are taking on the billing process. I think one thing of note to Dial-A-Bus, prior to billing, it was a relatively, what I would say, inefficient process for them, and we are learning for ourselves as well. This is primarily because what we do is, as people call that have to pay for a ride, there's a billing or an event that happens where we do a lot of tracking. That information comes to Dial-A-Bus and then it's transitioned to us, and then we bill the customer. What we find a lot of times is there's a lot of confusion, a lot of inefficiency in that process. A lot of times we bill for a client and they either did not have that ride or don't recollect having that ride. And then there's a conversation, did it really happen? So there's a lot of challenges that happen with that. What I can tell you is that typically we we bill $2,000 per month. That's what we're talking about here. Period of time that I'm looking at as part of this proposal is September 1st through June 30th of 2023. So let's call it $20,000 is what we're talking about that we would bill. Collections historically about 70%. So then that was historical. So again, we're only getting about $1,400 for every 2,000 that we're actually billing. So about $14,000 in this 10-month time. So bottom line, this is not a lot of money. It represents less than 3% of the entire Benton area transit budget. Obviously, every resource is important. The majority of the dollars that we get for Benton area transit are from our state, for MoDOT, for both federal and state resources. So one of the things that we are proposing for efficiency is to consider going to fareless rides for seniors 65 and older, as well again as people that are disabled that are outside Philomath and Corvallis. That would again have from a financial standpoint, and I want to make sure Commissioner Wise is getting the information she needs, is that she talked to me about, about $14,000 is what we're looking at over the next 10 months that we would expect to collect. Obviously, tight budget that we have in Benton area transit. We are proposing to seek potential STIF funding to backfill that cost. Again, $20,000 billed, $14,000 collected. We'll have to decide on what the best proposal. That is a resource that could fill the hole. At the same time, as your financial officer, I have reviewed sort of the costing related. Now, this has been something I've looked at very closely, actually, since arriving here in terms of the cost model with Dial-A-Bus and Benton area transit. This is something, regardless of the decision to get STIF money to backfill, that we could be able to finance for the next 10 months within our current budget. I am recommending that we would only do this till June 30th, 2023, just so that we can reevaluate. What we don't know here is that if we go fareless, what is that going to mean in terms of ridership? Would it suddenly start to pick up? Would there be situations where our costs could go a lot higher than we anticipate? So I'm not recommending that this would be a permanent. I think this is something we want to reevaluate. I have had conversations with Dial-A-Bus about this. Actually, as of yesterday, I did forward to all three of you a correspondence from Steve Harder, who is wholeheartedly supporting this effort. One of the things that he wanted to reiterate and reiterated in his email was the inefficiency. Again, we're experiencing now, but he also experienced it prior to us, and he recognizes the challenge, the collections issues that we have with that particular process. The other thing, though, I think it's important that he pointed out in his email is that a lot of times there are many clients that fall in this range of paying that don't actually have the $7 to be able to actually pay for a ride. This would be a tremendous service that we could provide to a lot of individuals, vulnerable populations that we could offer a ride to that, again, haven't had the dollars to be able to commit to this. So again, it's a balance. Obviously, we want to be able to provide that service. We'll see what kind of impacts that would have in terms of ridership that we reevaluate. But what I'm here to tell you today that we can, from a financial standpoint, support this. I would encourage us to seek STIF funding. This is an appropriate STIF request. We would be looking to pursue this. Gary is not here today, but I know he 100% supports this. The program supports this, and my staff are very much support this, that do a lot of the billing and the customer service. So with that, relatively efficient, I will take any questions that you might have on the proposal.
Sure. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate you bringing this to us, and I appreciate you addressing my two questions I had, which were looking into a backfill option, even though it's not a huge impact to our budget. I mean, every dollar counts. So I appreciate that. And then checking in with Dial-A-Bus and just making sure that they're on the same page and that we are, working on strengthening that relationship.
Commissioner White, just want to say very positive relation with Mr. Harder yesterday. He was very excited about this. He thinks, again, this is a great move for the program, for the services. And I feel like I can speak for him that he feels good about this direction.
All right. Very good. Other comments or questions?
Yeah, I think this makes sense on many levels. It seems like there's good support by all parties involved, and the 14,000 that we collect, that's gross, is that correct?
Basically what we in the 10-month period, I would predict that we would bill 20 and we would collect 14.
But it costs us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Money.
Thank you so much. And gosh, that would be something that would be important to let you know. We did do an analysis in relation to our cost for doing the billing, and what we came out to was approximately $1,000 a month is what we're actually paying on all the technical assistance that we do. This is just the billing component, right, and then the follow-up. So from a net standpoint, when you look at the cost for that 10-month period, we're talking about $10,000. So maybe net $4,000 loss. Thank you, Commissioner. My bad for not bringing up that very important piece.
Okay. And I like the sunset provision. I think that makes sense. Try it and see what the results are. But this just is a good idea, and I think has some advantages to the community, and the amount of money keeps shrinking as you look into it. So. I appreciate the effort that it took to get to this point.
I have one other question. You mentioned our net would be about $4,000. If we are able to get the STIF funding as a backfill, is that would that be the whole 20 or 14,000?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wise. So the net fiscal impact is, the cost that we are in financial services putting forward. What we would be pursuing is somewhere between $14,000 and $20,000 to recover that, because obviously my cost has, that's cost that we've always had. It's just been additional work that allows us to be more efficient. So thank you for that.
Sure. All
Between
right.
14 and 20,000.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, or motion?
I would move to discontinue charging a fee for the Benton area transit lift service to seniors that are 65 and older and people with disabilities located outside of the Corvallis and Philomath paratransit boundaries. This would be retroactively effective to September 1st, 2022 and continue until June 30, 2023, at which point the feasibility of continuation will be evaluated.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, commissioners. We all thank you very much for that.
And with that, we are right on schedule. It's 11 a.m. and we can move into our first public hearing in the matter of conducting the first reading for the ordinance removing the sunset date of Benton County Code Chapter 40. And with us, we have Rebecca Taylor, our Hope Project Manager. And let's see, I have a little script courtesy of our county council. Thank you. Okay. Tuesday, October 18th, 2022 at 11 a.m. is the time set for the public hearing in the matter of amending Benton County Code Chapter 40 to remove the sunset provision. All testimony, arguments, and evidence received during this public hearing must be directed towards the subject of the proposed code amendment. The hearing procedure will be as follows. 1, staff will present the staff report. 2, any member of the public wishing to present general testimony will be given an opportunity to speak. 3, testimony from any representative of any other governmental body. 4, staff response. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is acceptable to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the body, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please submit the material to Erica Milo, who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. Finally, I will ask the board if any commissioner needs to declare any bias, conflict of interest, or ex parte contacts. And I'm hearing none. All right, with that, let's jump on into the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we actually returned a lot earlier than we had anticipated in order to make sure we remove the sunset in time before the end of the year. So I am back sooner than I had expected. So thank you. And I have Greg Barrett here, the Deputy Director for Community Development, who is actually the home department for this work, but we've been collaborating to make sure we can get this work done. So I will defer to you if they ask any questions I don't have answers to. So we were directed to go back and revise the ordinance that is related to Chapter 40 to remove the sunset date of December 31st, 2022. For Chapter 40, which is vehicle camping at religious institutions in unincorporated areas of Benton County. The only change that has been made to this ordinance and code is the removal of that sunset date. And so staff are just completing the direction that was given by the board. And I will allow for any questions regarding the changes that have been made.
Any clarifying questions?
No questions.
No, I just remember when we did this several years ago, and I'm in favor of sunset dates like we just dealt with, and try it out and see if see how it's working. So I appreciate this thoughtful approach.
I sent an alert to some of the group community members that we've been working with when we started doing this work, and they were very appreciative, and it was an exciting opportunity to collaborate with our community on this. So it was innovative work in our community that helped push us along as a county.
I would just add, one of the reasons we established the sunset date originally was to see what potential challenges or concerns arose during the implementation. And to date, we're not aware of any significant issues or concerns that have arisen. So that's one reason that we feel comfortable recommending the removal of the sunset date.
Well, I think that shows you did a good job in the first place and with kind of uncharted territory. And so I think congratulations are in order for doing a good job at the start.
I would add that it reflects well on our community partners because all of the real work is done by the community partners who provide both the location and the services for folks in need.
Yes.
All right. So at this point, I will ask if there is any public testimony. We will ask in the boardroom first and then online. Is there anyone in the boardroom who would like to provide testimony? Seeing none. Is there anyone online who would like to provide testimony? Seeing and hearing none. Now I'll ask for testimony from any representative of any other governmental body. Hearing and seeing none. Is there anything else that staff would like to say?
Thank you.
All right, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, we can deliberate and I will entertain a motion.
I move to conduct the first reading of the ordinance removing the sunset date of Benton County Code, Chapter 40.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. Question for County Council. So this was the first reading. So does this come back for a second reading?
It does, but I need to have the first reading before we can go to the second reading. So how about if I read it and then I will give the date for the second reading?
Yes, please.
All right, before the Board of Commissioners for the State of Oregon, County of Benton, in the matter of removing the sunset date of Benton County Code Chapter 40, vehicle camping at religious institutions, ordinance number 2022-0312. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Benton County ordains as follows. Short title, removing the sunset date of Benton County Code Chapter 40 regarding vehicle camping at religious institutions. And now, Commissioner Wise, the question was, what's the second reading? The second reading date will be November 1st, which will allow this ordinance to go into effect December 2nd.
All right, thank you very much. I will add that to my hearing script. Let Vance talk at the end. Okay.
But no more.
Very good. All right. Any other comments or questions on this public hearing agenda topic before we move into our next public hearing? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our second public hearing in the matter of a public hearing to discuss the supplemental budget 23041 with Jenna Ambule from Financial Services. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
And let's see, I don't have a script for this one, but I believe it's the same staff presentation. We'll ask for public testimony and go from there. Do any commissioners have any? Do I need to ask them for bias, Vance?
No, not for this one.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into the staff report.
Good morning. As we discussed previously 2 weeks ago during the work session, I am here because 9 funds within the county fund structure are requiring amendment in the 21-23 biennium. Just a very brief summary of those. Within those 9 funds, operations would be increasing $42,484,525. The general fund reserves would decrease $1,227,700. There are transfers that would be decreased within two funds for a total of $16,935. And lastly, within three funds, contingency is decreased a total of $4,536,033. I would entertain any questions regarding the information that you did receive previously.
Any comments or questions?
Nope.
All right. And with that, we will ask for public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who would like to provide testimony? Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone online who would like to provide testimony? Hearing and seeing none. All right, any other comments from staff?
Just thank you for your time.
All right, comments, questions, deliberation, motions, commissioners?
I'll move to adopt the resolution in the matter of supplemental budget 23041.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, very good. Thank you so much, Jen. And I'm going to call for a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and do our last agenda item. So I'll see you back at 11:15. doing in the boardroom? Are we just about ready in the boardroom, or do we need another minute or two?
Another minute.
We just about ready to get started again?
Oh, we need Nick. I'll go get it.
Sorry, just to check in, we're still waiting on staff, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, just give me a holler when we're ready.
Okay.
So on.
Is anyone else on the call, or is this it?
I think this is it.
Okay, well, we need, apologies, we need to get Chris.
There are other people. It's just, I think the TV just shows whose camera's on, but I see Chris Edmonds is on.
Good, and John
And-
Horton?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent, okay.
All right.
I can start breathing again.
Looks like looks like we're ready to get started with 8.1, the Justice System Improvement Program. Survey number 2 results with Nick Kurth and our guests.
Well, really, our guests are the show here. I'm just queuing it up for them. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to Chris and John, or John and Chris, in whichever order they're talking. Just for context, we did do an initial round of surveying back in May of 2022. We followed that up with a second round of surveying in mid-September. And John and Chris are here to present those results and answer any questions. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
Great. I understand you all going to run the presentation. Is that correct?
I did in the packet. Yep.
And will it show on my screen? Fingers crossed. Hope so.
Good.
All right, that's fabulous. Great. Nick, will you just advance it for us?
I will.
All right. Well, pleasure. John Horvick, Senior Vice President at DHM Research. Pleasure to be working with Benton County again. We've had an opportunity a few times over the last couple years now. We're going to walk through the results of this most recent survey. So I go to the next slide, Nick. Okay.
Let's see. Erica might need your help. Oh, there we go.
There you go. So just to ground ourselves, what we did again, we wanted to measure voter support for potential Benton County Justice System Improvement Bond for the May 2023 ballot, identify voter priorities for key potential elements of the bond, and gauge voter price tolerance for various bond options. So big picture, we wanted to see how people are thinking about the bond. We tested it a couple different ways, which we're going to get into, and then we also tested an alternative, and we'll cover all of that. So just want to go next, Nick, just describe how we did it. So in the survey research world, things are changing quickly, particularly as people are expecting to be reached different ways. Some people still want to be reached with the traditional live interview phone call, talk to someone, have the interview administered by a person. We reach both cell phones and landlines. And some folks don't want to have to talk to anybody. They would rather be reached by text message and have a link that they can take the survey on their smartphone or throw to another device if they prefer. Because people have different preferences, we use different methods to reach people to ensure we get a good representative sample. So we did both here. Sample size is 400, a little bit bigger than we've done in our previous surveys. Part of the reason we needed to do that is because we split sampled, I'll explain that in a second, some alternative language or alternative presentation of potential bond measure. That larger sample was really necessary for us to have confidence in that split sample. This was conducted September 8th through the 14th. So just last month, just still very fresh data. Took about 12 minutes. I'm getting some feedback. Alex. I'll keep going. Survey response rates vary by different groups. And so in order to ensure we're getting a sample that's actually reflective of the population, we set quotas by age, gender, party, area, to make sure that our sample actually ends up to look like what we think that a likely May 23 electorate will be. And I can answer questions about that if people are curious, but we take the efforts to ensure that the sample is representative of the election that we think this will be on the ballot. Margin of error 4.9%, and things might not always add up due to rounding. So that would be why. All right, why don't you go next? So much kind of things to think about as we're looking through the data. One is that voter mood, voters continue to be split and a bit negative when it comes to outlook of their county. Boy, Benton County is still more positive than many other parts of the state. You've got compared to the state as a whole, or if you look at some communities in the state where voters are especially frustrated with the way things are going. So all things considered, compared to other places, the numbers in Benton County look decent, although certainly more negative than a few years ago. We continue to see that homelessness, housing affordability, and public safety are the biggest issues in the county. I will tell you, over the last couple of years, every single community except one, where we've asked open-ended what's the most important issue, has said homelessness. It is an issue that is persistent and on voters' minds across the state, not just in Benton County, but certainly influencing how people are thinking about this bond measure here. Why don't you go next? So we tested two different hypotheticals or bond measures with one difference between them, the inclusion of homelessness services. And you're going to see in these results that the inclusion of homelessness services makes a big difference in terms of voter support. It's not often that we get such clarity of results, but they are really clear here that voters do want to support homelessness services, and it makes from what could be a very difficult bond measure going forward to something that looks like it has real possibility. Younger voters, women, Democrats are more supportive of the bond measure. That's not unusual. And we'll show some of those results in more detail later. And if the bond doesn't include homelessness services, it's unlikely to pass. And an alternative bond measure would also struggle. And we'll see both of those numbers below. An alternative measure with a lower rate or a lower amount would also struggle. And then facilities focused on addressing mental health and homelessness are the top voter priorities where the bond money should be allocated. Those are the big things to keep in mind as we go through this, and then we'll show you the numbers here. All right, go next. All right, so the classic question, are things heading in the right direction? Are they off on the wrong track? Pollsters like us love to ask this question. It's been benchmarked for decades and decades and decades and across scores of communities. And we can see on the left here that that was May, 41% of voters at the time said the city or the county was heading in the right direction. On the right, in September, 38% said the county was heading in the right direction. That's the number within the margin of error. So I'd just say hold steady. Again, these numbers are lower than you'd like to see, certainly lower than they have been in Benton County in the past, but also quite a bit better than other communities that we have been in the last, well, couple of years, but even in the last few months. When you go next. So then we ask this big open-ended question. People can say anything they want. You know, what's the most important problem for the county to address? And, you know, they can say whatever they like. We listen, we read, put them into categories. And we can see that 29% say something to do with homelessness. Another 15% says housing affordability. 10% say crime and public safety. Those are the top three as well in May. I would sort of say in general, as you interpret these open-ended questions, when you see something above 20%, when people can say anything that they want, one issue getting more than 20% is a real sort of flashing yellow light. Hey, that's the big issue for voters. And here, homelessness is there at 29%. No doubt there's a nexus between homelessness and housing affordability, and as well with crime. Certainly in voters' minds, there's going to be a connection between crime as well, and you know, policymakers and may know more about what those connections are, but we know certainly talking to voters that they see a connection there. But those are the big issues. The purpose of today isn't to talk about the other ones, but it's always, I think, important to pay attention to what's lower on the list and maybe what's missing from this list. That can be as illustrative of what shows up as well. So maybe it's something to pay attention to at a later time. So then we get into the ballot test. So we did this a couple times. First, we did it cold, and then we gave people some additional information, and then we did a retest. But you'll see here, I'm getting some, I don't know if Alex can mute his, I think that's where the echo is coming from. We tested two different sets of language. People were randomly assigned to one version or the other. So half were randomly assigned to bond version A, and half were randomly assigned to bond version B. I'm going to read bond version B here. Shall Benton County issue up to 95 million of general obligation bonds paid by property taxes for mental health, community safety, and then here's the key difference between A and B in homeless services facilities. If passed, the bond measure would cost $138 per year for the typical home with a taxable value of $266,000. Funds from the proposed bond would be overseen by an independent committee, community oversight committee. So now we look at the numbers. On the left here, the green bars, when we did not include homeless service facilities, it was 39% support. The same bond measure with homeless service facilities included, it's 54% support. So you go from being 11 points underwater, below 50%, to a majority willing to say yes. Now, 54% is probably lower than we'd like to see. I'll be honest about that and clear about that. But it's certainly, moving forward, we know it's very clear that inclusion of homelessness services is what voters are looking for in order to be able to say yes to something. And we're going to see that in different ways throughout the data, but that's the top line number. So when we go next, just some demographic differences. You can see here some key groups that were more likely to support bond measure B meaning with homelessness services. You see a sort of significant jump up among older voters, particularly 65 plus voters, a jump for men, and then a jump for non-affiliated or third-party voters. So you can that's kind of where we see the movement when people knew that homeless services facilities could be included. Why don't you go next? All right. So then we said, all right, here are some different parts of this potential bond measure. Tell us if they're a high priority. Some are very high priority, some very high priorities, somewhat medium, somewhat low, very low. And then here again, we sort of see what really is key to voters. So the crisis center, we have 61% saying it's a high or very high priority. And then the homelessness resource center, we're at 58% saying it's a high or very high priority, quite a bit more than the correctional facility or the sheriff emergency operations. It doesn't mean that those things aren't important to voters, or there certainly doesn't mean that they're not important to the public safety of the community. But in terms of just understanding how we get voters to yes, what do they prioritize? It's the crisis center, it's the homeless resource center. So where you go next? So then after giving them a little bit more information, we said, hey, now that you've considered things a little bit more, let us ask you again. And again, we see the initial test of those are the lighter colors, and then the final test, meaning after they had more information, are the darker colors. And we see, if we focus on the bond B, the final test, we get to 57% support and just 36% opposition. We're fairly decent position there. And then I always like to pay attention to that certain support or certain to oppose. And the final test, that certain is 30%, which is 10% percentage points more than that certain to oppose at just 20%. So again, we don't often see clear results like this with the sort of experimental design, but they are very clear here. Homelessness services is what's supported by the voters. That's what's going to drive it to the potential for success. Why don't you go next? We then said, hey, there could be another alternative measure that went forward instead that costs less money but has less stuff. So reducing the cost by eliminating the sheriff offices and the EOC does not increase support. So just try to read this. The dark colors, that's this alternative measure, lower cost, $65 million, but eliminating the sheriff's offices and EOC, that's 49% support. And again, remember that the lighter color that sort of got the box around it, that's where we ended the final bond test with homelessness services at $95 million. That's 57% support. So the lower cost with less things did not drive support. What really drove support was the opportunity to address voters' number one concern, and that's homelessness. Next. And then just so policy choices, just to get you a sense of how voters are thinking about some key things. This is one where there's just honestly not super clear direction from voters. Nick, can you go next? There we go. We said, which do you prefer? The blue here providing long-term supportive housing for those who are homelessness, or the red providing short-term shelter space for those who are homeless. And we see the community is pretty divided on that. We have 30% who aren't sure. Which may mean that people just don't really know what's best. They're kind of giving us the answer, maybe it's in their gut, but maybe could be moved one way or the other. But the point is that we have an ambivalent or divided community on this issue. And so the extent that you move forward in one direction or the other, know that there's going to be a large majority of voters that need to be persuaded or informed why that's the policy choice. Next, I think might be it. Yeah, that's it. So those are the key things. So there is a full report that goes into more detail, particularly with demographic differences and all the questions, wording and everything as well. I would encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't already. And with that, I will pause and do my best to answer any questions, or I'm not sure, Chris, if you have anything that you would want to follow up with before we do.
John, I think that was a great presentation. Happy to answer any questions, though.
Questions or comments?
Well, just a couple things. I'm going from memory, but these percentages seem similar to the first round of polling. Is that accurate?
I actually have to look at that. I'm not, Chris, if you have to remember the top of your head. I don't remember.
Have it off the top of my head.
You mean the percentages of people supporting and not supporting?
I think
They're
it's
better.
They're
than this.
better, particularly with the homelessness services. What I can't remember is what we were at last go around off the top of my head, but I'm going to pull it up.
I want to say that we were at 46 and 46. Tell me if I'm right, John.
Okay, well, give me. I'll have an answer for you in 15 to 30 seconds. But go ahead. If there's another question, we can pull that up too.
I guess the follow-up, I appreciate this information and look forward to getting the more detailed version. But for me, it helps set priorities, and this is what we've been doing since the beginning, is try to get a sense what's important to the community, and then responding with our priorities. So this is helpful.
It was 44% back in June, and then of course the ask was different, and the way that it was worded was different. The total dollar amount was similar, but 44% to 54%. So sharpening it up, focusing on what we know the voters' top priority, got it to a majority from the previous test in June.
And earlier this meeting, we voted to have our health department apply for a grant for the city of Corvallis for a year-round shelter. So seems like this information fits right in with other efforts that the county is involved with.
I would agree, although I just want to clarify that it wasn't year-round shelter, it's year-round emergency shelter with particular temperature thresholds, both heat and cooling, and then with smoke for that particular grant.
Other questions?
I was really struck by, this is on page 136 of the packet, by what I guess it's crosstabs, by looking at the results across the measure version A without homeless services and B with homeless services, just how much of a gain there was in every demographic, including among the Republican community. That there was a jump in support from 14% to 34% of the Republican prospective voters in the May election. So it's that really heartens me that the support is not the increase in support is not partisan.
Other comments or questions?
I would like to say thank you to the team that put this survey together. We had a lot of internal discussion at the board level and at staff level, both about how to frame this set of questions and to try to get to our dual objectives about understanding what the priorities of the community were and understanding some of the cost sensitivity issues. And I think we successfully got to answers on both, and that is going to be very helpful as we frame our final bond package.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. You're a great team to work with. It was a real pleasure for us.
All right. Oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there is an action item before you today.
Yes.
You may recall that back in May, before we even had the first survey results, we had a discussion and made a decision not to commingle the addressing homelessness with the JSIP bond measure. And so today we're effectively here to reconsider that decision. And we're not here to identify or discuss options or to pinpoint an amount, but I am asking whether you would like the JSIP team to consider including homeless services facilities in the bond measure. Ultimately, this would then become part of our discussion down the road relative to the bond measure package. We would go off and look at options. We would go off and discuss amounts and then come back.
That sounds good to me. That seems like this idea has been floating around and get it more formalized, and I think makes sense.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect. I would move that we explore options related to homeless facilities services for inclusion in the Justice System Improvement Program bond measure.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And just to make sure, Erica, you're able to get that one, no problem. Thank you.
John, Chris, any other comments before we depart today?
Only that we're here to answer additional questions as they come up.
Is there any talk about doing a third survey? Or do we have what we need? Do you think we have what we need at this point?
I'm going to invite Chris to weigh in on that. Chris.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Commissioner. As you recall, we've contemplated doing an additional third survey on this. Now, after the results that have come back with survey number 2, we do feel like we have clarity in terms of the direction that we want to take. And there aren't a lot of questions for us that are left unanswered. So at this point, we are not recommending proceeding with an additional survey. Now, again, it's possible that a community group or somebody else may survey at a future point if there's a campaign to support this effort. But we feel comfortable recommending the approach that was just adopted by the commission and working to tighten up a survey within the frame that you see or was presented here today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you coming here today and sharing all that information with us. Thank you for your good work. Nick, thank you. Is there anything else that you need from us?
Oh, thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the time today.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, I will adjourn the meeting at 11:45 a.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.